What's up, my family? Listen, first-time listener, or you've been here the whole damn time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, giddy up, let's go, no notes.
That's my baby. That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored! They did it!
What the hell was that? Oh, yeah!
What the f*** are you talking about?
How are you not excited when you hear that? Let's go, baby. Rob Ellis Show, A2D Radio. Oh, man, I'm pumped. I get all week. You know what? What I love about the show is it's kind of like an NFL season, right? Get an entire week to look back, to look forward, man. And we are right now in the heart of this thing with the NFL season, week 2. I am so excited to dig into this stuff with you. And, you know, naturally, I think right now we're looking at this season in many different ways, you know, mind you, many different ways. And I think, you know, smartly, there are people that are concerned, and I don't blame them. Here's the thing. Do you panic after 2 weeks? No. Do you have reason to have the antenna go up a little bit? Yes, I think you have every reason to go up. So let's dig into the Eagles. All right, and we're going to hit some Phillies too. And I want each and every one of you guys to jump in there in the stream, and we will react to the things that you have to say. Rob, what's up, man? We're gonna rock this thing and kill it as we always do. Appreciate you being a part of it. All right, so let's start with this 2-0 start, which is not an easy thing to do when you're facing Bill Belichick. And then you have 4 days to turn around when you're banged up. Okay. So those things are real. They're not excuses. It's not rationalization. It's real in the NFL. You look at the amount of 0-2 teams that we thought would at worst case be 1-1 or maybe even 2-0. I mean, you think about it right now, like in those towns, New England is in a panic right now with the way that they have started. Okay. Cincinnati, even though they started 0-2 last year with Burrow's health, they're in a panic right now. Denver, with all the yapping and all the shit talking that Sean Payton did before the season started, 0-2. Chargers 0-2, where their fans are saying, here we go again, right? What else is new? So there are a lot of teams right now that are in real desperate straits. And the Eagles aren't one of those because it's a lot easier to fix things when you've won than it is when you lost. You're not desperate. Now, I want to start with the good here. And actually, two of the things that I just laid out are the good. You won in tough circumstances in both places. But beyond that, you went into New England, you got up, they came back, you took their best shot, you survived it. You did enough. You made enough plays in a very difficult spot. Look at what New England did. Even though they lost the game, look at what New England did with Miami's offense on Sunday night. Their defense is no joke. I am not a Mac Jones guy. I don't like the weapons that he's surrounded by. But their defense is good. And when Belichick has an entire offseason to game plan for you, that can be a tough thing. Then you got to turn it around 4 days later. You're without Nakobe Dean. You're without James Bradbury. You're without Reed Blankenship. You're without Kenneth Gainwell. You know, you're without some heavy hitters here. And you're playing a team that whatever Minnesota is, and they're another one of the 0-2s, but whatever they are, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson are going to get theirs. They're too good. It's the strength of that team. Okay. So you couple that with the fact that you were down all the guys that I just named, and in game, you lose Avonte Maddox. There are going to be breakdowns. There were breakdowns. That's why Minnesota, kind of hung around in the game and was able to score, because you had injuries. You had real injuries on that side of the ball. So if you're asking me what I'm concerned about, by the way, what's up, Jake? What's up, Brian? Thanks. Good to be hanging with you guys as always. And again, you guys want to fire questions my way? Let's do it. What up, Rob? I'll disagree. It's only been 2 weeks. And once the Eagles and Jalen adapt how teams are defending them, they'll be fine. Well, as a matter of fact, Raph, let's go to the, what's up, Brian? How you doing, my friend? Let's go to the A2D question that we have. Are there legitimate concerns, reasons for concern with the Eagles? Agree or disagree? See, I'll agree. And Jake, I get what you're saying, and what you're saying makes perfect sense. concern is different than panic is different from, oh my God, they're in trouble. What I'm concerned about is you have injuries now at positions where you were already light. If you think about it, you were light at the linebacker spot, you were light at the safety spot, you were light at the corner nickel spot, because you already lost Zach McPherson. Now you've lost Avonte Maddox. Now you're dealing with the Kobe Dean being out, for a few more games at least. And you're even thinner. You have a lot of inexperience there. So, I mean, if you look at the depth chart in the Eagles secondary, see a lot of guys who haven't played a whole lot of NFL football. Undrafted free agent types. Like, you're going to be now counting on, unless the Eagles make a move, and they brought some guys in for tryouts who are on the street. Now, that doesn't mean that Howie can't make a trade, but Josh Jobe, Mario Goodrich, Eli Ricks, Keely Ringo, either late draft picks, not draft picks at all, undrafted free agents who made the team, who are going to be out there in big spots. You play a Tampa team this week that's going to throw Mike Evans and Chris Godwin at you, and Cade Otton, who is not a bad tight end. Therein lies the problem. You're going to have to outscore teams, at least in the early going here. And with the way that the Eagles offense is playing right now, where it's somewhat one-dimensional, I wouldn't say it's totally one-dimensional. They did hit a couple of deep shots with Devontae Smith. The first one, I think it was 54 yards, was a little bit underthrown, but Devontae made a great catch. And then, of course, he had the big touchdown catch. That's my biggest concern, is that you're going to have to deal with having to outscore teams. So Brian's only concern is the injuries. We saw it last night, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Yeah. I mean, major injuries. Nick Chubb, Shaq Thompson, and, the Eagles losing Avonte Maddox, certainly a big blow, but it looks like a lot of the other players for the Eagles, injury-wise, are going to be able to come back. And I think that was one of the keys to last year is, for the most part, other than Derek Barnett, the guys that you lost were out for like 3 to 5 games. And then they came back and were available for the playoffs. So that's why I think there is reason for concern, because right now your passing game isn't where we thought it was going to be, and you're going to have to score a lot of points. Now, here's the good thing. As tough as it was to turn it around and play 4 days later after the season opener, getting through it, what's up, Pete? Getting through it buys you 11 days. And by the way, I love the Fat P Phillies logo. Just a killer. Maybe I'll wear my Phillies hat next week, my old school Phillies hat. I just think that having that time to game plan, to fix things, to recalibrate, for Brian Johnson to sit back and self-evaluate, for Nick Sirianni to be able to do that, for Jalen Hurts to be able to do that, for the offensive line that's given up 7 sacks, even though they're not all their fault. I think it allows the opportunity for a lot of for the coaches and the players both to try to figure this thing out, because there's way too much talent for the passing offense to keep looking like this. I mean, Jalen's too good to look as hesitant as he looks. And I don't know about you guys. Am I the only one who thinks, I don't know, it almost feels like he doesn't fully buy into whatever the game plan is. Like on a couple of those RPOs that he kept, he was kind of like tiptoeing around and not just hitting it like he used to do last year. And I don't know. I hope he's fully healthy. I don't think that's what it is ultimately, but it looks to me like something's up. And then the passing game, they just can't get in a rhythm. Like the interception last week, he forced that into 2-3 guys. It was not something we saw Jalen do last year where he made those kind of mistakes. He really is a guy who's generally good at taking care of the ball. He had the fumble in week 1, later in the game, which kind of kept New England in it. I don't know. I guess I'm more forgiving of that one because I felt like it was a great form tackle by Peppers, which knocked it loose. The interception was all on him. Like it wasn't disguised. It was just a straight force. So I'm worried about that to an extent. Am I panicked? No, I'm not panicked. I think these 11 days will come in really handy for them to get this thing figured out. And even though Tampa's a good defense, and they are a good defense, and we'll get into Tampa in a minute, a little bit further in detail, but I feel like the passing game is going to return this week. But the problem is I think Tampa's going to be able to throw the ball too. So if you're looking for a play here, I would go over 45.5 in the Eagles game. I got the Eagles game at 7 last week, by the way, and it was a sweat cover. It was a tight one. And did anybody else get screwed on Monday night with Carolina's late touchdown and 2-point conversion to make it a 3-point game instead of 3.5? I was the only one. Okay, just me. But anyway, had a good week. Other than that, had Pittsburgh as well. So yeah, I agree. It's only 2 weeks. You don't get into a panic for sure, but you keep your eye on certain things. And I think last week they tried to force feed things to Dallas Goedert a little bit, unsuccessfully. We know AJ wasn't happy with his touches. What's crazy? He had as many catches last week as Devontae did. They both had 4. But Devontae had big plays, AJ didn't, and therein lies the frustration. I think, the thing you have to take into account, and just in terms of the AJ Brown thing, I get he's a competitor. I get he wants the ball. He wants to help his team. I would prefer he do it behind closed doors. That's all. Just do it behind closed doors. You don't need to do that kind of thing and air out your dirty laundry when there's 6 zillion cameras now on the field at Eagles games. That was my only issue. But I think it's squashed. I think they move on. I don't think it's a big deal. I just would have liked him to handle a little bit differently and also understand time and place. You ran the ball 48 times. You threw it 18. There's only going to be so many passes that go around. Michael checks in. He says, hey, Rob, I think it's far too early to overthink things, but I definitely have some concerns with the injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's a fair take, Michael. I think it's a fair take. MWC, MCW, MWC. No, I think it is fair. I do. Brian, appreciate it, buddy. Good chatting with you as always. Yeah, look, I look at it from this standpoint. When you have alpha dog types like the Eagles have, there's always going to be somebody who's a little bit unhappy, right? And I thought that Dallas Goedert and DeAndre Swift handled it very well the first week when they didn't get a lot of touches. I would just like to see AJ handle things similarly going forward. But again, 48 runs to 18 passes, you're not going to have a lot of shots here. But the other thing that I think is happening a little bit here with people I talk to on the radio or I talk to here, I feel like they're downplaying the Eagles' ability to run the ball. I mean, has anybody else picked up on it? It's kind of like, oh, yeah, they can do it, but why is there a but? You just went out against Minnesota and decided we are going to pound it down your throat. And we're basically going to run very similar plays. You know it's coming, and they couldn't stop it to the tune of 257 rushing yards. You know how hard that is to do in that league? Be predictable and still succeed with these brilliant coordinators and brilliant players? It's hard to do. So I don't take that for granted that they were able to just kill them in the run game. They also did that, with Boston Scott being out during the game with a concussion, with Gainwell not playing in the game because of the ribs. DeAndre Swift was awesome. And there were a lot of things that I liked about what he did. But the biggest thing that I liked was the fact that he put his foot in the dirt and he basically just bam up the middle and hit it. Not a lot of pretense, not a lot of dancing, not a lot of trying to bust it outside. He just went hardcore and ran it straight up the gut. And look, good for him. I always think about it from this perspective too. For those of us who grew up in the Philadelphia area, so got a bug flying around. For those of us who grew up in the Philadelphia area and like dreamed of being an Eagle and dreamed when I was a little kid of playing at the Vet, and then as you got older playing at the Link, how freaking cool would that be to be DeAndre Swift Thursday night and what he was able to do in front of his family and friends, probably in the uniform that he grew up rooting for that team. I mean, it's like hitting like a walk-off for the Phillies or a game-winning shot for the Sixers or an overtime goal for the Flyers, whatever. I mean, it just has that feel to it. So I thought that was really cool. But it also does make you question, how in the heck does this guy get 2 touches the previous week? 2, 1 pass, 1 run. I know they like Gainwell. I like Gainwell too. DeAndre Swift's your number 1. Now, I'm not saying he gets 25 carries a game or anything like that. I think at that point, you're going to get him hurt. You got to be smart about it. With your distribution with him. And I think from a touch standpoint, and this goes for, run pass, I think 17-ish, 15-ish is probably a good number for him. Keep the other guys worked into the equation, keep Gainwell worked into the equation, get Boston Scott involved, get Penny a little bit more involved. Man, how about if you're Rashad Penny? You're down 2 of the 4 running backs. Swift's gotten a ton of carries already. And what did he get? 3 carries in the game? I don't know. I mean, look, I'll take Nick Sirianni at his word and basically say, look, it's going to be game to game, and we're going to ride the hot hand. And that's good. I think it makes it them difficult to game plan for. I think you have different skill sets with these guys, and that's fine. It's fine by me. But we need to see more DeAndre Swift consistently on a consistent basis. I would be shocked. I've had a lot of people ask me, okay, Gainwell is cleared to play with the ribs. Who starts against Tampa? I mean, this thing's a no-brainer, right? It's DeAndre Swift. I ride a hot hand. I'm not one who believes you can't lose your job to injuries. Sorry. I'm not. I would absolutely start Swift in that game. He earned it. He deserves it. And it's not like, you had Derrick Henry back there, in Kenny Gainwell, where it's his job, and everybody else is thought of as the backup. No, this thing was total up for grabs. Take your pick, reach into the hat mix. So roll with DeAndre Swift. That's for sure. But I do think just get back to a couple other odds and ends here. There are a lot of positives here. For me, I said this to you guys since I started doing the show, and I think you can attest to this. I thought Jalen Carter would be in every rookie defensive player of the year discussion because he's that skilled. He is a hit the ground running guy. He is a ready for prime time without a big buildup. You know what I mean? He doesn't need that slow burn and then all of a sudden there's the takeoff. He came in ready to play. He's got an array of moves. He's got a great motor. He's got an understanding of the game. He's got a football intelligence. He's also a guy who has smartly, listened to Fletcher Cox and the veteran guys from what everybody's saying. And it's really paid off for him in a big way. And you can see it. I mean, he's 4th right now in the NFL in pressures through 2 games. He's got 11. I mean, that's big time what he's doing so far. So that's huge. And I will tell you that the element that surprised me about Jordan Davis is how good he's been getting to the quarterback. He's got 1.5 sacks already. Like, I envisioned Carter's the one who's going to be in the backfield more, getting to the quarterback, and Jordan Davis would be stuffing the run, occupying blockers, letting others make plays, etc. I mean, I'm blown away and happy at what I'm seeing from him. I just think it's absolutely huge that the development in his game. Now you have those two. Fletcher Cox looks rejuvenated, maybe just because it's early in the season, and Milton Williams is playing very well. So all 4 of your defensive tackles have been more than legit. Josh Sweat really came on last game. You saw it with the strip sack, but he's right up there in terms of pressures. And it's only a matter of time before Reddick gets going. They get the cast off the thumb eventually, whatever the case may be. And once Reddick gets going, I think then you'll see Brandon Graham come along. I don't know, Derek Barnett maybe make some plays or whatever. But it also allows your interior guys to get home. I think the defensive line is fine. And actually, in fact, is in very good shape. I liked what I saw from Zach Cunningham, and I liked what I saw from Nicholas Morrow. I thought both of those guys really stepped their game up. And maybe it's just learning the system, getting used to things, whatever. But Cunningham was not that same kind of player in week 1 that he was in week 2. So that's also a really good sign that your linebackers are starting to come on a little bit. I think barring any kind of setbacks, you're going to get Bradbury back for this game against Tampa Bay. If you have Bradbury and Slay back there, you feel a lot better about your chances than you did last week, especially when Avonte Maddox went down. So make no mistake, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a real challenge here with Mike Evans, who went crazy last week, and Chris Godwin. Now look at it from this perspective. Baker Mayfield is a bit of a wild card. They have gotten very good Baker so far through 2 weeks. He hasn't turned the ball over. He's playing smart. He's doing a lot of the things that made him the pick, where Cleveland took him as the first overall pick. But he's also prone to mistakes. He's prone to inconsistency, to turning the ball over. So I think that is something that at least I'm expecting to rear its head, hopefully very soon here. And even though they ran, I think, for over 100 yards last week, and Rashad White, I think, had 73, this is not a team that runs the ball particularly well. And the Eagles right now, through 2 weeks, granted, by the way, everything's through 2 weeks. We get it. Through 2 weeks, have been the number one team in terms of stopping the run. In rushing yards per game, the Eagles are number one. Now, unfortunately, their passing numbers are not very good. But I think if you make this Tampa team one-dimensional, what's up, Charles? I'm doing good, brother. If you make them one-dimensional, you will be able to get after Baker Mayfield and force him into some mistakes. And I think that's where the key to this game, there's a couple things. One, get after Mayfield, get him harried. He is mobile. He can't get out of the pocket. So you got to be aware of that. He's got more mobility than Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins, who they faced thus far. So that's something you have to take into account. But I think if you get pressure on him, if you hit him, he'll make mistakes. The other side of this is the Eagles' offense. And really collectively, offensive line's got to block it up better. It's got to be schemed up better. That play call on third down on the first drive against the Vikings was just awful. Just awful. Brian Johnson, here's where I will be worried too. With 11 days off and time to game plan this thing, the way that the Eagles have, with this talent, if the offense still looks like this, there's a lack of cohesion, if it's choppy, whatever the case may be, if it still looks this way, then I think we have to start worrying a little bit. Not panic, no P word, just a W word or a C word, with concern. So I think that's something, you want to watch here, because if they don't come out ready to go and the game plan doesn't look fresh or they're able to attack, look, it's going to be a challenge. Todd Bowles is a good defensive mind. He's an excellent defensive coordinator, not a great head coach normally, but he's a good defensive coordinator. So I'm not telling you it's easy, but I don't want to hear any more excuses. Just like I don't want to see any more gnats flying around. I don't know what is going on. I opened the windows because it's warmer, and maybe that's what's happening. But I want to see the Eagles get into a rhythm. There hasn't been a time really, although the first drives have been pretty decent, but they haven't netted touchdowns. I want to see this thing get into a flow with Jalen moving around a little bit, a nice mix of the throw and of the pass. I want to see that in this game more than anything else, and get going, because I think you're going to have to score points for sure. But it's interesting, man. You look around what's happening in the NFC East. Now, Dallas has been as advertised, but you know what? Doesn't Dallas look like this every year? Don't they? I mean, aren't they the ultimate regular season team? Aren't they very Sixers-esque in that sense? And then when it gets to be crunch time in the playoffs, we know what happens, right? And I'm not taking anything away from the way that, they played. Micah Parsons is a wrecking crew. They have a lot of talent, but I believe it when I see it in the postseason from Dallas. There's no doubt they played well so far. Beyond that, I mean, how about there's 3 2-0 teams in the NFC East? It's the Eagles, it's the Cowboys, and the Washington Commanders. What a weird game that was. So Denver gets up on them early. Washington goes on a 32-3 run. Denver fights back. Hail Mary. It was a great throw. I mean, Russell Wilson had heat right in his face when he made that throw. Passes batted up, boom, touchdown. But they had to get the 2-point conversion. This is where Washington got really lucky. That was a straight-up pass interference. Straight up. Wasn't called. They survived. They win. They're 2-0. I think they're doing it with mirrors. I think they beat a bad Cardinals team week 1, and I think they beat a very mediocre Denver team in week 2, despite all Sean Payton's talking. So the Eagles have made a move, by the way. Tywan Mullen, a cornerback, has been signed to the practice squad. And good work out of you, Jake, being on that. But yeah, the Eagles had a spot on the practice squad, and they make a move. They added him. He was the Eagles added him to the practice squad before the season, Tywan Mullen, but released him when they added Nicholas Morrow and Tyree Phillips earlier in the month. So that's who they have added. But yeah, I mean, look, all in all, a lot to like, a lot of things to build off. But it's going to be a tough division. It's going to be a tougher conference than maybe we thought it was going to be. I mean, I think divisionally, overall, the East has the best players, or the best teams, excuse me. Eagles, Dallas. We'll get to the Giants in a second. Washington. Most divisions don't go as deep with their 4. Now, let's talk about the Giants. Giants were down big early to Arizona. Arizona gave up the lead. The Giants came back. They won the game, but Saquon Barkley got hurt. Now, we don't know whether he's going to play Thursday or not. That is up in the air right now. It's a tough turnaround for somebody with an ankle injury. They're saying it's not a high ankle. And credit to them. They made a couple plays. Daniel Jones made a couple plays to Jalen Hyatt, and Saquon Barkley made some plays as well. And Waller had a decent game too. But what I see from the Giants offensively is what I thought before the season. Saquon Barkley's a problem, but I don't love their passing attack. I don't love their weapons other than Hyatt and Waller. And I think Daniel Jones, if he really has to bring you back from a deficit against a good team, I don't mean Arizona, who I think is still a bad team. I don't see it with them. With Washington, the key to all this is going to be Sam Howell, who I thought actually played pretty decent last week. Now, mind you got to understand the level of competition too. So that's what we're seeing there. San Francisco, San Francisco was in a battle with LA. I don't think the Rams are as bad. That's why it's always difficult and challenging doing the schedule thing, the win-loss thing. It's fun. I do it. We all do it. It's great content. But think about it from this standpoint. We thought this game this week for the Eagles, Monday night against Tampa, was going to be a roll-through. It's going to be an easy win, right? I don't know that I think that now. I think Tampa's better than we thought they were. And Mayfield's playing decent. Doesn't mean he's going to do this the whole year. And I don't think that game the next week, just one of the rare 1:00 games, against Washington is going to be as easy as people thought. And I'll take it a step further. Go to week 5. They have to go out to LA to play the Rams. The Rams are better. Sean McVay is coaching his ass off right now. But then the flip side of that is I think the game at the Jets is going to be easier, even though their defense is really good. Zach Wilson can't play a little bit. Okay, that one's going to be easier than we thought. So, it's kind of gauging what we have here. That's for sure. Greg wants to jump in on the agree to disagree that there are real concerns. What's up, Rob? 2-0. We Gucci disagree with the poll. Concern, yes. Legitimate concerns, no. I didn't think so. If we aren't 0-2, I'd probably be agreeing, but with the W's, the hugeness league. Yeah, I hear you. And I think that, look, as I said earlier, when you win, it's a lot easier to make adjustments, a lot easier to figure things out, and you're stacking right now. We're not going to look back in week 10 or 12 and talk about how artistically beautiful these wins were. It's going to be who cares they won. And I think you're especially going to need them because I think it's going to be really close in the standings in the NFC in terms of who gets home field advantage between the Eagles, Dallas, and San Francisco. I don't think that part of it's changed. I really don't. I still don't think the South is that good. I've watched Atlanta. I've watched New Orleans. I have not been impressed. Tampa's been better than I thought, but I'll still believe it when I see it for an entire year from Baker and from Todd Bowles and with a lack of a running game. The North isn't special. People wanted to crown the Lions, slow your roll a little bit. I think Green Bay's going to be decent. I think eventually Jordan Love's going to be good, but that's not a special division. And Seattle's off to a 1-1 start, although I think they beat Carolina this week. Rams, better than we thought, but still not a special team and still without Cooper Kupp. And the Niners are good. But that's what you're talking about. I mean, it's going to be, I think, a 3-horse race to be the number 1 seed. The AFC number 1 seed, all of a sudden, you're looking at this vastly different, right? I mean, with the way that Tua has started off, and it's always the big question, can he stay healthy? But with Rodgers going down, with the Bills starting off the way that they did week 1, Pittsburgh, Pickett has not looked great so far. Cincinnati's off to a terrible start, and Burrow's dealing with a bad calf, and that didn't look good last week. I don't know if anybody got a chance to see any of that game. Woo. Greg, yeah, the top of the NFC is stacked. 3 teams fighting for one, no doubt. Cincinnati has started off 0-2 before, and they fought their way out of it. But that has been with a healthy Burrow, so that's going to be a big concern for them. I would say for sure. The Chiefs, that first game when you're playing without Kelsey and Chris Jones, I wouldn't really panic, and they got past Jacksonville in what was a pretty competitive game, for sure. But really, Jacksonville, I think, wins that division, but I don't know that they're ready to take that next leap yet. I'm still not fully buying Baltimore all the way. I want to see a little bit more of it before I get totally into that. Cleveland, the Kareem Hunt injury, the Nick Chubb injury is gigantic. It's gigantic. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. Here's why. You lose one of the better running backs in football who is just tough. He is just flat out tough. But not only do you lose him, Deshaun Watson's not playing well. He's just not. It's I don't care what you're doing, but especially something that takes the athleticism, the quick twitch, the whole nine, that takes all those kind of things into account. It's hard to get through this. Oh my God, Ralph's going to kill me. I am late on a break. Ralph, my apologies. I will make up for it. We'll take a quick time out. I got lost in myself. We'll take a quick time out. We'll come back with the Rob Ellis Show right here on A2D Radio.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom-reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
Thank you to our friends at Royal Billiard. We appreciate you, man. And by the way, I need help with my pool game, with my billiard game. So I would appreciate that. All right. So again, my bad on that one. Sometimes I get so caught up in things. I'm just cranking. Anyway. All right. So where was I? We just need to stay healthy, get it together for the playoffs. CJ Johnson is out for the year too. I know, man. Look, I know he said some things out the door. I don't like seeing guys get hurt. I really don't. I don't like seeing them being out for the season. That's a tough blow, man. He got hurt in training camp where it looked like he might be out now, hurt again, and he's done for the season with a torn pec, and he was only on a 1-year deal. That's tough. But real quick, let me just finish my thought on Cleveland here. Watson not playing well and not having Chubb. Now you're and the kid Ford who stepped in last night did a pretty good job, but you're forcing Deshaun Watson to really now at least get back into Houston Texan Deshaun Watson form. I don't know that that's quite there yet, but that is the biggest thing. And there's no, taking it into account, the injuries, man, and the Eagles are in pretty good shape other than Maddox. And I would just say, I think if the Eagles continue to get torched in the air, okay, which could happen this week with Tampa Bay, if they do continue to get beat up pretty badly in the air, I think Howie will make a trade. You'll start dipping into some of these teams that aren't off to good starts, and you have a guy in the last year of his deal who could still play for a team that's going nowhere. I know Cardinals put Budda Baker on the IR too. I know most of us, would automatically default into Budda Baker. I get it. But just keep your eye over the next couple of weeks on teams that get off to 0-4 starts, 1-3 starts, 1-5 starts, whatever, before the trade deadline pops up. They're the teams that you want to hit. They're the teams that you want to go after. And that wouldn't surprise me one bit. Howie is extremely aggressive when he sees a shortcoming with the team. So I think a move could be made if the young kids don't step up here. You're also, there's going to be a lot on the plate of Slay and Bradbury here, trying to pick up the slack for a lot of younger players, not only at the nickel corner, but also at the safety spot. So that's going to be something else to keep your eye on here with this team. But just continue to kind of jump around the league a little bit at some of the surprises in the NFL. And I'll get to the Phillies in a second. Miami looks great. Miami has a legitimate defense. They have a nasty passing attack, and you saw last week when New England took a little bit of that passing game away that they have the ability to run. Mostert ran extremely well. The biggest thing for them is, can Tua stay healthy? He stays healthy, they could be the 1 seed in the AFC. It's not crazy. I'm still not discounting Kansas City by any stretch, but I'm just telling you, as diversified as they are, and by the way, Mike McDaniel is the ultimate mad genius. And he's quirky, he's eccentric, he's kind of messing with you half the time. Did anybody see him running off the field after the game? It was strange. He's a different kind of cat. But I think he's brilliant. I do. I think he is absolutely brilliant. Miami, definitely a team to keep your eye on. Buffalo, if Josh Allen continues to clean up his act. Week 1 was bad Josh. Week 2 was mostly good Josh. And he played well. And that's, for them, that's encouraging. Not in any way, shape, or form writing off Baltimore, but I need to see more of Baltimore. Not writing off Pittsburgh, but I didn't like the way Pickett looked last night. Their defense won them that game tenfold. As far as the West goes, other than the Chiefs, I think the Raiders are what they always are. 9-7, 7-9. Chargers seem to always kind of look good on paper, but disappoint. Herbert can fling it. Nobody doubts that. But ultimately, in the end, what are they? I don't know. It's a tough call out there in the AFC. As far as the NFC, in terms of surprises, I don't really sweat anybody in the North. I don't sweat anybody in the South. San Francisco's the only team. I think Seattle is good. Seattle's not great. Seattle's a team that they did a much better job last week. They forced 3 turnovers. They play Carolina this week, so I think they'll get to 2-1. And Geno looked better last week. So I think they're good, but ultimately I think they're in that next tier after the Eagles and the Cowboys and the 49ers. So I think that's kind of where they are at this point. So look, there's definitely a lot to look at when it comes to this Eagles team. I want to get it back to the Eagles in a second here, but I do want to talk some Phillies with you in the meantime. Not many games left here. We're at the point of the season now where you want to be able to finish strong. I don't think there's no doubt in my mind, at least, that they're going to be the number 1 wild card. But what you want to do is be able to finish strong here and ride it right into the postseason. This is one of the dangers of being Atlanta. Having so run away with this thing and clinched so early, you kind of lose a little bit of motivation, and it's hard to get back up when that's the case. And I think maybe we saw a little bit of it last year with them, and the Phillies had to sort of, even up until the very last series, they needed that first win in Houston, which Nola got you. I think that if the Phillies can get on a little bit of a run and the schedule is favorable, after Atlanta, you talk about the Mets twice and Pittsburgh. So you should be able to get hot. And hopefully in that last series, set up your pitching. Here's my guess at what I think they're going to do rotationally for the playoffs. I think it's going to be Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, TBD. I think you could get a Sanchez-Lorenzen piggyback combo for that 4 spot, and it wouldn't surprise me. I think they have zero trust in Taijuan Walker right now. I don't think he will start a game, barring an injury. And I don't know how much trust they have to use him out of the bullpen because that hasn't really been who he is. But nonetheless, I think that's the way they're going to go with the rotation. Quite frankly, I have no idea how the back end of the pen sets up. My guess is right now, Kimbrel's the closer. But between Kimbrel, Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Soto, I don't have a high trust level. The crazy part is the most consistent reliever the Phillies have had is a guy none of us even knew who he was before the season started, if we're being honest. In Hoffman, Jeff Hoffman. He's been their best, most reliable receiver or reliever by far. And, if you look at it from their point of view, are you going to use him in high leverage? I would think about it, actually, over the course of the last few games, using him in high leverage situations to get him used to it. I know there's nothing quite like the playoffs. I get that. But I would think about it if I were the Phillies, using him in that spot. Will they? Probably not. Just look, and I know I'm not just going to gloss over Nola at the number 2. I know how much that drives people crazy. I get it, but they're a loyal organization. They feel like he gives them the best chance to win. They feel like, he's 1 or 2 mistakes away from being clean, which I think is ridiculous, the 1 or 2 mistakes thing. It's like, that's the game. You can make 1 or 2 mistakes and lose. That's it. That's the way it goes. Like, you can't do man, he was great up until the 5th. Who cares if that was the case? I do think the Nola thing has become very interesting in terms of whether or not he'll be back. I think it went from likely to 50-50. Just feels like St. Louis a little bit, doesn't it? I don't know. I mentioned this before on the air, and you guys think I'm crazy, you tell me. On Friday, he did a radio spot with a local St. Louis sports talk station. Pitchers never talk game day. Starters, at least. Relievers might, because you never know when you're getting a game, but starters never do. In fact, when I started the business, basically any PR guy worth his salt would say, you don't even ask on the day that a guy's going to start if he's available for an interview. And yet Nola did one in St. Louis. I do wonder about that, why that was the case. It's interesting. I don't know if anybody else had noticed that, but I thought that was something to keep your eye on for sure. The tough thing is the offense has really come around. 5 home runs Monday night. Schwarber could hit 50 this year. Turner's numbers are ridiculous. Harper, after sitting on 3 home runs forever, may get to 20 something. It's not, none of it's out of the question. They're hitting, and get Real Muto on the road. He's a whole different guy. But the $1 million question, as far as I'm concerned, is, can you win playoff games 10-9, 8-7? It's rare. The pitching is generally a lot better in the postseason than it is in the regular season. And if the Phillies don't get good enough pitching, again, the good news is Suarez, couple straight outings, pretty good since he came back from the injury. And he even said as much, like, I've been up and down this year in terms of my performance. Some of it has to do with injuries and, missing my turn and all those kind of things. But if you get him settled in and locked in as we get close here, you get, with the Zach Wheeler that we saw in Atlanta on Monday. And I think that's, for the most part, the Zach Wheeler that we've got. There's been a couple of duds there, but that's going to be anybody when you start 30 games. You feel good at least from 2/3 of your first 3 starters. You don't know with Nola. Nola is one of those guys, like, cover your eyes. I don't know what we're getting here, and just hope. And hope's usually not a plan, but it is the hope with Nola is the Phillies plan. And hope with the back end of the bullpen is the Phillies plan, because it's too late to do anything else right now. And they're the thing. I would hate to see the Phillies either get a lead or fight back to take a lead or tie a game, and then they cough it up like we've seen so many times this year. 3 times with Harper. It happened again on Sunday with Bohm hitting the home run, and the Phillies kind of battling back, and then only to see Sir Anthony blow it. That's the kind of stuff that will just rip your heart out when it comes to the playoffs. And that's the biggest concern for me, is that the offense, which has been good, delivers, and then your bullpen, which has not, is the thing that absolutely kills you. So, I like the fact that the Phillies have the experience. I like the fact that there's no easy out in that lineup. And if the bullpen gets going, let's face it, the Phillies weren't great down the stretch last year. They weren't great in Chicago. They weren't great in Washington. And they were somehow, some way able to, and I think a lot of it was aided by that comeback in the first game in the wild card in St. Louis in the 9th, and then they rode the wave. That's it. That's all it takes. Now that wave can either crash, you can ride it all the way in, to the shore here. So that's something, that you don't really take into account right now, that you can't until we get into the postseason to see what it looks like a little bit different. But yeah, no, there's no question that needs to be something the Phillies get in terms of a quality bullpen. We come back. I'll put a bow on the Phillies here with some of the positives in terms of the offense, because there are some crazy numbers that they're putting up right now. And then we will swing it back to the Birds, who have a tough one against Tampa Bay this week as they look to go 3-0 on the 2023 season. I will talk a little bit about Nick Sirianni. I am Rob Ellis. You are watching the Rob Ellis Show on the great A2D Radio. Right back.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years, and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen, more dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards, more bar and kitchen stools that can change a room,
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
And fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
All right, appreciate it, folks. Yeah, but back to the Phillies where we were just discussing. I'm Rob Ellis, the Rob Ellis Show on A2D Radio. They're putting up pretty historical numbers, power numbers. I'll give you some of these numbers that I jotted down prior to the show for you, just to illustrate that point a little bit more. So, since August 1st, 90 home runs, which is the most in baseball. Okay. I mean, we're talking about the Braves. Yeah, Frank, I agree. Offense looked great last night. Hope they can do it again tonight. I agree with you. Especially against the Braves. Even though you're not going to catch them, I just want to sort of plant the seed with them a little bit more, because Atlanta's had good success against the Phillies this year. But I'd like to keep, handing it to them, as I always do when they play Atlanta. 90 home runs since August 1st, since the All-Star break. Phillies have the second most home runs, behind just the Braves. The numbers that Trey Turner has put up, despite the awful start, and it wasn't an awful start for a couple of weeks. It was an awful start for months, as in like 4 months. But the numbers that he is putting up are mind-blowing. All right, let's pretend for a second we had no idea about the early portion of his season. And I just said to you, hey, with, 12 games left, here's Trey Turner's numbers. 270 average, 320 on base, 468 slug, 788 OPS, 26 home runs, 75 RBIs, 32 doubles, and 5 triples to go with 164 hits and 96 runs scored. That's through 146 games. If I told you that, other than maybe the average of 270, you'd like to see the average be about 290 or 300, right? Other than the average, we'd be thrilled at what that projects out as, right? And then for all the heat that Schwarber gets, for his average, which is 197 in the leadoff hole. All right, let me give you a couple other numbers when it comes to him. Okay. What we want from our leadoff guys is to get on base, to score runs, to get hits. Okay. 102 runs, 108 hits, 45 home runs, 99 runs driven in, 120 walks, 345 on base, 479 slug, 820 OPS. Incredible numbers. Now, I get the 197 average and I get the 200 strikeouts, and I'm not, turning a blind eye to it. But what I'm telling you is this guy for this team in that spot works. It works for him. It works for them. So I'm good with Rob Thompson riding that hand there, because it seems to just work for everybody else in the lineup. I'll go back to, and he's been a little bit cooler lately, but Bryson Stott, 285 average, 332 on base, 428 slug, 157 hits, 76 runs. This is from like the 7 spot, 6 spot, occasionally 5 spot, 30 doubles, 15 home runs, 59 RBIs. Oh, by the way, in terms of stolen bases, for Bryson Stott, 29 for him, 27 for Trey Turner. And then let's just jump to Bryce Harper. I'm not going to do everybody in the lineup, but Marsh hitting at 283, phenomenal. Bohm, if you look at Bohm's run production numbers, how about 91 runs driven in for Bohm? That is quality work out of him, and he's played very well in the field. But let me just give you Harper. This is in 116 games. So this is 31 less games, 33 less games than Kyle Schwarber's played for Bryce Harper. Coming back 2 months early from Tommy John and dealing with, his power not quite being there for the early going here. 290 average. Okay. He's now up to 18 home runs and 63 runs driven in. To go along with walking 72 times, to go along with 124 hits, to go along with 76 runs scored. That's incredible production. And that doesn't even take into account the amount of clutch moments that he's had. Think about it. Unfortunately, because the bullpen has coughed up games, this dude has delivered at least 3 times with either game winning or at least giving you the game, giving you the lead or tying a game with home runs. And it's all been, blown away. I think about what his numbers would be had he played the entire year. And I'm not telling you he would have been the MVP. I mean, I get it. I get what Acuna's doing. I get what Olsen's doing in the National League. I get what Ohtani did in the American League. I understand that. But still, man, incredible what he's been able to do. I have no doubt. I know the Phillies can be streaky sometimes, but I think they're in a good mode right now in terms of their offense. The offense is going to be fine. It's just a matter of the pitching. And hopefully when we're talking next week, we'll have another, bunch of games under our belt, and we'll kind of have a better handle at what the pitching staff's going to look like, where they are. The magic number continues to dwindle. These are all very encouraging signs with the Phillies. And again, the stack series wins. That's what they did in St. Louis. If you can if you can handle your business here in St. Louis, or in Atlanta, that would be good as well. All right. So back to the Eagles for the last few minutes of the program. So mention Tampa's next, and a couple things to keep in mind when it comes to Tampa. So they had 6 sacks last week. Now, part of that is the team that they were facing. Okay. And the team that they were facing is hot garbage, to say the least. You talk about a Chicago Bears team that is not good, a quarterback that holds the ball too long, and an offensive line who hasn't, exactly gotten the job done. But let's go to Baker Mayfield here. He's got 490 passing yards through 2 games, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns. He's only been sacked 1 time. He's got a 104 passer rating and a 69 completion percentage. He's playing very good football for them. Okay. And the line's doing a nice job protecting him. They have what I would say is an okay running attack. Not great. It was really bad and limited in week 1. This week, Rashad White, I think he got over 70 yards in their game. He was a 3rd round pick of theirs last year out of Arizona State. Not great. Solid. The concern here is Mike Evans. He's already got 237 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. It's Chris Godwin, who hasn't done a ton yet, 10 catches, 109 yards. Cade Otton, the tight end, is good. Trey Palmer, pretty solid as well. They do have a passing attack that you should concern yourselves with. Now, go to the defensive side of this thing. Vita Vea is a force in the middle at defensive tackle. He had a sack and a half last week. He's also a guy who can stuff the run. He's a very good player. Quality player, in fact. Beyond him, here's a guy you got to keep in mind too. And this guy had 2 sacks last week. He's not a real household name. Joe Tryon Shoyinka, who's an edge linebacker. He's a guy too who will get to the quarterback, a guy to watch. Cam Gill, linebacker's a guy to watch. Todd Bowles is generally a pretty good schemer here in terms of getting ready for teams. And the blueprint's out for what New England's done, what Minnesota's done. It's a lot of junk defenses that the Eagles are seeing. A lot of stuff done with the goal of confusing Jalen Hurts, of keeping him, off of his game, making him think a little bit, making him rush himself a little bit through his progressions, not hang in the pocket necessarily. You're going to see the same thing this week until the Eagles start beating it. Okay, you are going to see it, and they're going to do the same thing against that. I think the key thing is, look, if Tampa loads the box and they say, okay, you ran all over Minnesota last week for 257 yards, we're not going to let you do that this week. If they do that, then you got to take advantage of it in the passing game. If they're just saying, hey, man, we're taking this away. You beat us any other way? Great. Good for you. Now, I think if they do that, it's crazy when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. But if they do, good. You get guys in zero coverage, manned up, single coverage. By all means. I mean, we have seen what Devontae Smith has turned into here. With his ability to catch the deep ball, to catch balls in traffic, to take pretty good shots and still get up and be fine. We saw it in the Super Bowl. Took like 3 or 4 hits along the sideline. Popped up, boom, good to go. But, make no mistake, after what went down with A.J. Brown last week, not being happy with his touches, I think not only will he make it a point to be aggressive early and get open, I think they'll make it a point to throw some balls his way to get him going. I mean, they did try to pacify him after his little temper tantrum last week, and one of them he caught, it was called back. The other one he was pass interfered with, and they didn't call it, right? And so let's not forget that. The Eagles are aware that he might be a little bit unhappy, and they're going to look to get him the ball, I think, early, kind of like they did with Goddard last week. Now, I want to see them get Goddard in better percentage kind of plays. It was a lot of like short stuff where he had to break tackles. I want to see them utilize Goddard the way that they utilized Hawkinson last week. I would like to see that. I think these are the areas that the Eagles could take advantage of Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is better than we thought, but this is not a great team. There's a reason why they had the problems they had last week. I know the offensive line so far has held up for them, but I look for Jalen Carter to keep doing his thing, Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, and Josh Sweat. And I think this is the game where Hassan Reddick gets at least his first sack. So I'm gonna if I was I'm gonna give you a prop here. I don't even know what the over under is in Vegas on this one, but I would say grab Hassan Reddick with a sack in this game. The other thing I would say is I think this is, as I mentioned, an over kind of game. 55.5, 54.5, whatever you get it at. I think both teams are going to score. Unfortunately, I don't think the Eagles are going to be able to shut down Tampa's passing game with all the injuries that they have. So I think, Evans and Godwin are going to get theirs. I think the Eagles are going to be able to score on them too. And who knows, maybe it's done through the running game. I think the Eagles ideally would like to pass to get a lead and then run to milk the clock. But I give them credit last week. Nick and Brian Johnson weren't stubborn. They saw what was working and they said, you know what? Okay. They can't stop the run. Our passing attack isn't really great. We're going to keep doing it. And we're not even going to get cute. We're going to keep doing basically the same thing off tackle and run it down your throat. And Kelsey was brilliant. The guards played very well. The other thing, the other guy to get a little credit to, I thought Mailata played his best game in a while. Like certainly better than week one, but I thought it was his best game going back to last year in a while. I thought Mailata played last year and he was dealing with a shoulder thing, but he was absolutely awesome last week. That's a good thing. Lane Johnson's going to get going. He will. He's too good not to get going. That'll happen. He's getting used to a guy next to him. I get that. But I think, Juergens has more than held his own so far too. So that's another thing that you have to like. We were wondering about the young guys. We didn't get a chance to see it as much on defense because Nakobe Dean was hurt early. Only hurt in game one, and then Reed Blankenship in game one. We haven't seen him in game two. So some of the younger guys that we weren't sure about, we just haven't had the opportunity. But Cam Juergens so far so good, and I expected it. I mean, I think A, he's that kind of talent. B, he's surrounded by really good players, and C, he's coached up as well as anybody when it comes to Jeff Stoutland. So the Tampa game is going to be interesting. I think it's another game where it's a pretty close game. I think ultimately the Eagles win in the end, which is, really what, obviously that's the objective, but especially early in the season when the games are a little bit easier, you really want to be putting together a lot of wins just to build some equity in the account here when it gets a little bit tougher, which it will. I can promise you that. But a lot of fun today. Great job by everybody in the chat section participating. Thanks to everybody streaming, everybody listening. We do it each and every week, Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. I want to thank my man Ralph. I want to thank my man Tom. Everybody involved behind the scenes doing all the heavy lifting. Much appreciated, folks. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you next week. Tell a friend. Let's hit the like button. Let's subscribe. Let's tell a friend to subscribe. We are the A2D Radio, and I am the Rob Ellis Show. I will see you guys next week. Appreciate you hanging with me. Thanks.